So as of this Thursday, our fascist Supreme Court has sided with the big ag chemical companies, the pesticide manufacturers, over the health of human beings. That's what this country is. It stands for corporate corruption, for the corporate oligarchs, and overregulation for everyone else. That's what it is. And that's what Trump stands for and his whole fascist Republican Party. What happened is he signed an executive order back in February to boost the production of glyphosate-based herbicides in the US, like Roundup, which is a big common weed killer that's used at farms to grow crops that poison our food supply. And he just wanted to ramp up production of it in the US. And because of that, now the Supreme Court voted that they're now immune from lawsuits for when they give people cancer through their products. When people are exposed to their products, the pesticides, and they get cancer from it, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, now they're immune from lawsuits. And that is just totally corrupt. They have been poisoning our food supply for the last 50 years. Bayer, Monsanto, they're the big ag giants, pesticide manufacturers. They sell the pesticides to the farmers spray it all over the crops, and it poisons our food supply. It contaminates everything with pesticides. That's why the cancer rates are so high in this country. We have diabetes has skyrocketed. All these chronic diseases are high because of a poisoned food supply, and for a lot of other reasons too, but that's a big part of it. Our food supply is poisoned and we're eating contaminated food. And our fucking rapist, white supremacist, fascist president promotes that. He just wants the big corporate oligarchs to continue to maximize profits at the expense of all of us, everyone else, the health of Americans, and the future generation of kids that are going to continue to be poisoned by the corporations. And no one's going to dare criticize him about it. None of the Republicans are criticizing him. They're just sitting there saying, yeah, that's my man, corporate corruption. And that's why this country sucks. Because we have too many sheep, these stupid fucking Americans, that just accept things the way they are and say that America's so great, put their American flags up, and then don't realize the corruption that's going on and the moral rot in this country. And then they just accept it the way it is. They conform and play by the rules. And this is why we have this. And it just makes me disgusted. This guy has given out billions and billions of dollars more in subsidies to the oil companies now every year due to his big, beautiful bill. And the oil industry, they screw us over too. They make us totally dependent on them to survive. And then they can just gouge at their gas prices anytime they want. They can do fracking, anything they want that messes up our natural world and poisons us. They don't care. And now he's in cahoots with the big ag companies, the pesticide manufacturers. And then we have the vaccine manufacturers that have killed people with vaccines, COVID vaccines especially, through their injuries and vaccine mandates, who have been immune from lawsuits since 1986. And now Monsanto's not going to have to be accountable at all for what they do. They've been poisoning our food supply for the last 50 years or more. And now they don't even have to face lawsuits. Because the last few years, they've been finally starting to get sued from several billions, like tens of billions of dollars in lawsuits just coming at them now because of what they've done. And they got more coming at them because a lot of people who are exposed to the Roundup end up with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and they're suing them for compensation. But now the fascist Supreme Court basically voted saying that, nope, they can be immune from lawsuits, so they can ramp up the production of these pesticides here in the US to poison us in the name of food security. Because when Trump signed the executive order to ramp up production of these pesticides, he said it was a national defense and food security issue. Because we're so dependent on these pesticides to grow crops that we somehow need to continue using them to grow food, which is a big fat lie. It's just a scam. Before we had these pesticides, this country did just fine growing crops the old way. And why aren't we putting more money into regenerative agriculture and rebuilding the soils up and growing food sustainably without these chemicals and transitioning farms into more organic and biodynamic practices, crop rotation, pasturing, cover crops? But they don't want to do that. What this USDA does is they're giving out billions to row crop farmers to continue growing GMO corn and soybeans that has no food value whatsoever except to poison us with high fructose corn syrup and make livestock feed that goes to confined animal feeding operations, aka factory farms, and then make ethanol. And then they'll just ramp up production of the pesticides to grow them crops. And the farmers get free handouts for it. Now the pesticide companies get bailouts to sell them these pesticides. It's all a big scam for Big Ag to screw us over. That's what America is. Corporate corruption. And the Republican cult won't dare question it. They'll just go along with anything Trump does, and they won't dare criticize him for anything. And we have our health secretary, RFK Jr., who I voted for in 2024 as the independent candidate because he has been fighting corporate corruption for 40 years as an environmental lawyer, big environmental activist here in America. And he actually won lawsuits against Monsanto when these lawsuits started a few years ago for the Roundup lawsuits. And now he's our health secretary, and he isn't saying a damn thing about this to stop Trump from allowing this immunity from lawsuits happen for these guys. He's just going along with it, just defending Trump on everything and playing by the rules. And it's a huge disappointment to me that this is what he's allowing to happen and everyone's just going along with it. As long as that happens, this situation is only going to get worse in this country. The future generations of your kids are going to continue to be poisoned. We're going to be poisoned as well, more than we already are. Big ag companies maximize profits. The big farms that own tons of land, all for themselves, and get free handouts from the government to grow these poison crops, are going to continue to maximize profits, while everyone else suffers. And food prices are still expensive. It's just a big scam. And when will the Republican cult admit it? Because they don't want to admit that. They don't want to admit that the economy is fucked up because of these big corporations screwing us over, poisoning us, messing people up. They're in cahoots with the corporations. And so are a lot of the Democrats, by the way. The Democrats have been very complicit in solving this issue. But the problem is, the Republicans escalate it, and then they still claim that they're pro-life when they're not. And then they accept these fascist rules, and they won't criticize anybody for it. If it's a Republican like Trump, they'll just go along with it, worship the ground he walks, do whatever he says. If Trump told Americans to get rid of all their guns, I bet a large percent of Republicans who claim to believe in the Second Amendment right would give up their guns if Trump told them to. That's how brainwashed they are. They're a bunch of Nazis that are brainwashed to just play by the rules of the establishment, and they worship Trump, so they'll do whatever he says. And that's a problem, because I'm a firm believer in the Second Amendment right to own guns, to defend ourselves. And I'm not a Republican at all. I'm anti-Trump. I'm very liberal in a lot of ways. But the Republicans that worship Trump, if Trump got rid of the Second Amendment right, they'd probably be all for it, because they'll do anything he says. They worship him like he's an earthly savior, and then they call themselves pro-life as a way to sugarcoat all the cruelty that they're allowing to happen right now in our fascist government. They call themselves pro-life. How is it pro-life to allow the big ag companies to poison us and the future generation of kids? They'll have childhood cancer. diabetes, these rates of cancer are going to continue to skyrocket more than ever if we continue to allow this broken food system to continue. But looks like it's only going to get worse. And this country needs to burn to the ground. And all these rich white people that worship Trump and voted for him, they need to suffer for their racism before they're going to finally criticize him. Because until they got to experience what everyone else does, who suffers of unaffordability and all the issues that the fascist government is causing in this country right now, they're not going to care. As long as they can live in luxury of having a bunch of wealth and money to keep them safe and living in luxury and spending money, they're not going to care. They're not going to care that we have kids rotting in concentration camps all across America right now. They're not going to care that the big ag companies are poisoning our food supply. And I'm surprised they don't care about that, because that affects everyone, that we're getting poisoned by big ag. But they'll just go along with whatever our fascist government does. And that's a problem with this conservative ideology. They're all pro-establishment. They won't question or criticize anything. Why this country has gotten to this point, because too many people have conformed and abided by the rules. And I'm not trying to say that the Democrats are great either, because they've done a lot of the same thing. They go along with it, and then they go along with whatever their politicians tell them to do. But I feel like the MAGA has just taken it to new extremes. They won't question anything, and they worship Trump more than anyone. And it's just gotten out of control. And then they worship the cruelty that he promotes. And then instead of realizing that these economic problems in this country are because of corporate greed and corporate control, as these big corporations hijack our rights and want to make us slaves to them, and are all in cahoots with the government, getting free bailouts and subsidies from the government, instead of admitting that, the Republican cult just wants to blame our economic problems in this country on illegal immigrants. And why is that? Because they want to promote the white male patriarchy and promote their racism. That's all it is. It's just a cover-up for how racist they are, and how they just want this country to be for wealthy white people and no one else. And if that's what America is, this country isn't worth fighting for. It isn't. Something needs to change. This country needs to suffer. We all need to suffer for what we've allowed to happen, for what we've allowed our corporations and government to do in order for this to stop. You know, we could all go on a mass general strike and shut this economy down, shut our government down, evade taxes by quitting our jobs to lower our taxable income and saying we've had enough, because enough is enough and this has to stop. But too many people don't want to stop living their normal lives and living in luxury to do this. They want to continue going on vacations, wasting money at restaurants, buying luxurious items, and just having a grand old time while we have kids rotting in concentration camps across the U.S. They just take random people of color, throw them in concentration camps. We have the pesticide manufacturers getting away with poisoning our food supply. And we have the oil industry that is gouging the gas prices up and controlling us, and they have for over a century now. And then our government is blowing up schools in Iran. And people still want to pretend everything is normal right now. And it shouldn't be. This shouldn't be what America is. I was brainwashed that it's a free country that represents free speech, freedom, and liberty. And that's not what I'm seeing. I'm seeing a fascist takeover, and it's been escalating over the recent years. I figured people would finally wake up by now, but they haven't. They just want to continue living in luxury, especially the rich white Republicans. None of this has affected them yet, because they got wealth to keep them safe, and they got white privilege to keep them from being snatched up by ICE. So they don't really care. They just want to live in luxury and then demonize immigrants and gay people and abortion and then call themselves pro-life while they voted for a fucking rapist 3 times in a row. And then almost 80% of white Christians voted for this rapist. And then they still call themselves pro-life. That's how messed up and morally corrupt America is right now. And it's not the America I want to live in. I mean, I'd like to move maybe to another country that's better, like Canada or Europe, but I don't want to leave America. But it needs to change because people need to wake up and realize this is not right. It's not the America I want to live in. And it's been a rough week that knowing that the pesticide manufacturers are getting more free bailouts from the government for no reason, just to promote corporate corruption in the name of food security. And that's what the Republican cult is allowing to do. And if they really cared about making America healthy again, like what Secretary Kennedy said and supported for years before he joined the Nazi regime, they'd be at the White House protesting, at the Supreme Court protesting, maybe even raiding it to stop this from happening. But they're not. They're just sitting there with their tails between their legs, going along with whatever Trump and the fascist government does. As long as they have rich white privilege, they're not going to do anything, and they won't dare criticize the establishment. And that's what's wrong with America. Please let me know if you have any solutions and leave in the comments below. I'm disgusted with all this, and I just want to hear what other people think of this and how they feel, because it's frustrating for me. Thanks for watching.